Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the final day of the commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the Aceh Peace Agreement, hosted by ERIA School of Government. Over the past 2 days, we have retraced the path of peace in Aceh through many valuable perspectives. On the first day, we have heard first-hand experiences from people who were at the center of the peace negotiation. On the second day, we have broadened our lens, hearing from academia, media, civil society organization, voices that provided deeper insight into different dimensions of sustaining peace. Today, on day 3, we will focus on 2 critical pillars of the peace process: the diplomatic efforts and the role of Indonesian armed forces. Last but certainly not least, we will hear from His Excellency, former President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, whose leadership marked an important chapter in our nation's democratic and peace-building journey. To officially open our program today, please allow me to invite to the stage, he is the Dean of ERIA School of Government. Please welcome Professor Nobuhiro Aizawa.
Former Minister and the Rector of University of Prasetya Mulia, Hasan Wirayuda. Former Chief Commander of the Indonesian Armed Forces, Endriartono Sutarto. The ASEAN Institute of Peace and Reconciliation Executive Director, Ambassador I Gusti Agung Usaka Puja. Excellencies, Ambassadors, and our dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you all. It is our utmost honor to welcome you here in ERIA. My name is Nobuhiro Aizawa, the Dean of the ERIA School of Government. This afternoon is our final day of this special 3-day event in commemorating the historical achievement that the people of Aceh, Indonesia, and all the partners have built together. It was exactly this day, 20 years ago, that our leaders have signed the historical agreement. When finally brought relief to the people, when we finally brought hope to the people, especially during the time when everyone was drained for a long war and devastated after the tsunami. It was a showcase of statesmanship at the highest dignity that the leaders have shown. And I have to say with strong conviction, it is a history that it must not be forgotten. It is an achievement that we all have to sincerely acknowledge, appreciate, and to study. This is why we commemorate here together today. We are here to celebrate and to learn from our leaders' long and hard struggle, the wisdom and the courage that changed the course of history. We are here to discuss those insights so that we can bring the lessons of Aceh to those who need help to bring peace in their place. And last but not least, we are here to discuss how we can bring the past 20 years of peace to the next 20 years. We will not take the peace for granted. We wouldn't know how to do so, how we can sustain peace, if we do not know how we got to peace. And all the details, how the peace was structured together. If we don't know this, we don't know how to enforce and to strengthen and to revise accordingly to the coming era. We need to understand the details of how this house of peace was structured and constructed, with whom and in what way. And otherwise, we don't know how to repair if the trust towards peace is eroding. We have to find the solution by studying the details, how we got there, and how to strengthen it. Yesterday, one of our friends, Professor Humam from Shaikuala University, asked, has peace won? Maybe yes, but maybe not yet. So we have a major homework to do together. And to work together, we need to study. We really need to study. So we are fortunate today that we can learn from the best leaders we have ever had. Pak Hasan, Pak Indriartono, Pak Puja, and in the final speech of Pak President SBY. Hope we can commemorate today this very 20th year of Aceh Peace Agreement together with high hope and to be determined together to sustain peace for the next 20 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ayazawa Sensei, for the welcome remarks. Now, please allow me to call to the stage. He is the President of ERIA. Please welcome President Tetsuya Watanabe.
Good afternoon. His Excellency Dr. Hassan Wirajuda, former Foreign Minister of Indonesia, General Endiarto Starto, former Chief Commander of the Indonesian Armed Forces, General Nipat Tanggrek, Vice Minister for the Office of Prime Minister of Thailand, His Excellency Gusti Agung Wesak Puja, Executive Director of ASEAN IPR, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor to welcome you on this third day of the commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the Aceh Peace Agreement organized by ERIA School of Government. Over the past 2 days, it has been a very enriching learning opportunity for everyone about the stories of Aceh peace process. On the first day of this event, Vice President Yusuf Kala reminded us that the prolonged conflict harms all the parties and that peace is won by the courage to sit together and listen. Also, Tengku Malik Muhammad Al-Hattar, the Wali Nanggolo of Aceh, told us that the peace process is born not from victory or defeat, but from the courage to understand and respect one another. Negotiating peace, as they have shown, takes both courage and mutual respect, principles that remain painfully absent in many of today's conflicts. Aceh's journey was possible because our leadership emerged from different corners, each vital to success. President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono stepped in at a decisive moment, shifting the government stance from armed confrontation to genuine negotiation. General Endiarto Starto ensured the armed forces' commitment to peace agenda, creating the trust needed for disarmament and for the transition to a lasting peace. Dr. Hassan Wirajuda, first as chief negotiator and later as a foreign minister, brought diplomatic skill and international credibility to keep the talks on track during the most difficult moment. We are very honored to hear directly from each of them about the experience in making this peace possible. Our purpose in holding this commemoration is not only to honor the past, but to document a lesson so that the next generation of leaders in Indonesia, ASEAN, and beyond can learn from them and understand the necessary conditions for peace talks and negotiations. Aceh peace process reminds the world that even the most entrenched conflicts can be resolved when courage meets compassion and when all sides can imagine the shared future. The road from hatred to harmony is never easy, but Aceh proves it is possible, that the rewards are beyond measure. Finally, I would like to commend my colleague, Professor Aizawa, for his dedication and commitment. His commitment and dedication to Indonesia and to ASEAN made this event possible, bringing distinguished and key players gathering together here. Thank you very much. I look forward to the discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you, Watanabe-san, for your welcome remarks. Now we are going to hear the reflection on the diplomatic efforts of the Aceh Peace Agreement. Please allow me to call to the stage. He is the former Foreign Minister of the Republic of Indonesia. Please welcome His Excellency Hasan Wirayuda.
Your Excellency, Professor Tetsuo Watanabe, President of ERIA, Professor Nobu Aizawa, President of the School of Government and of ERIA, my good friends and colleagues, General Edriartono Sutarto, and Ambassador Gusti Agung Pusaka Puja, Honorable General Nipat Tonglok, good friends of Indonesia, Vice Commander of the Aceh Monitoring Team, and Ambassador Harry, former Ambassador of Indonesia to Japan, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me at the outset express my commendations to ERIA for hosting and organizing these commemorations of the 20th anniversary of the Aceh Peace Agreements. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, said Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher who founded Taoism. Nothing in life is instantaneous. Even the tallest trees grow from small sprouts. In the context of Aceh, the journey to peace may appear relatively short if compared to the 23 years of armed conflicts that preceded the dialogue process. This is especially striking when measured against the many unresolved or protracted armed conflicts involving questions of sovereignty in the Asia-Pacific regions. The peace process between the governments of the Republic of Indonesia and the Free Aceh Movement, or GAM, unfolded over a span of 6 years. But it was still, I should repeat, it was built upon decades of conflicts, mistrust, and intermittent attempts of resolutions. The final 3 years, concluding, I should not say that, but instead, the overall process was complex and delicate. Armed rebellions, such as the Free Aceh Movement, claim independence for Aceh, directly challenging the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the Republic of Indonesia. Two foundational principles of the United Nations Charter, which every state, whether old or newly independent, jealously guards. Here, the demand for Aceh independence intersected with the domain of international diplomacy. Some countries in Europe began to internationalize the Aceh issue under the banner of human rights and the principle of self-determination. This was accompanied by a willingness to allow their national territory to serve as launching pad for separatist movement anywhere in the world. Diplomatic efforts were therefore required to counter this internationalization campaign. Indonesia made it clear to its friends and partners that they face a choice: to remain steadfast friends by respecting Indonesia's sovereignty and territorial integrity, or to support separatist movements acting against it. Sovereignty is not only about rights, but also about the obligations that comes with it. The key obligations for friendly nations is to refrain from supporting separatist movements or allowing their territories to be used for such purposes. These principles is embedded in the ASEAN Charter of 2009, and is reflected in several of Indonesia's bilateral treaties. Indonesia's diplomacy also campaigned vigorously to secure support for other countries and international organizations such as the United Nations and the European Union. The aim was to ensure that Aceh remained framed as a domestic issue within Indonesia's sovereign jurisdictions, while also keeping doors open for dialogue to address conflicts' root causes. From a strict diplomatic perspective, dialogue and negotiations with GAM was not typically the purview of foreign affairs. GAM was not an international actor, but rather a national entity. On that basis, I was initially perplexed when President Abdurrahman Wahid appointed me, then serving as ambassador to the United Nations in Geneva, to be the chief negotiator in dialogue with GAM. Interestingly, it was reportedly GAM's leadership who suggested my name to Mr. Bondan Gunawan, the Secretary of State and Special Envoy of President Wahid, during his exploratory visit to Stockholm to promote dialogue. My suspicion is that this proposal was connected in my earlier work as facilitator and mediator of the peace negotiations between the government of the Philippines and the Moro National Liberation Front, or MNLF, over the conflict in the southern Philippines from 1993 to 1996, leading to the final Manila Peace Agreements. GUM and the MNLF were brothers in arms, with many of their forces trained in Libya. It was almost ironic when Saif al-Islam, son of Muammar Gaddafi, the leader of Libya, came to Jakarta to offer Libyan mediations with GUM. Our response was blunt. You should not even think about it. We know what Libya has been doing against us. The central question throughout the negotiation process was whether the end goal would be independence, autonomy, as some arrangement in between. The dynamic of reformasi, particularly developments in the concept of wide-ranging autonomy as well as internal reform within the Indonesian military, were decisive factors in shaping the eventual settlement. On the genesis of the dialogue process, the armed conflicts in Aceh had raged for 23 years before a new approach emerged, one focused on settlement through dialogue and negotiations. In my view, two main factors push events in these directions. First, reformasi created space to correct our past policy mistakes and introduce new approaches to governance. This included a rethinking of the relationship between the central and local governments, leading to the introductions of wide-ranging autonomy in 2001. Secondly, what I would call the Gus Dur factor. President Abdurrahman Wahid, Indonesia's first reformist president, was a humanist, a democrat, and an advocate of human rights. His administrations mark a departure from a predominantly military approach of the previous 20 years under President Suharto, during which the only policy towards armed rebellions was to crush it militarily. By the late 1990s, the situation on the battlefield had reached a stalemate. Neither side could expect a decisive victory. Against this backdrop, President Wahid sent his Secretary of State, Bondan Gunawan, to Aceh to meet with GAM Commander Teku Abdullah Safei. Although Bondan expected to meet the commander deep in Aceh jungle, he was surprised to find him in the open daylight of a district town. This encounter was followed by Bondan's visit to Sweden, where he met the top GAM leaderships and a professional agreements to pursue dialogue was reached there in Stockholm. As we commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Aceh Peace Agreement, we must give due credit to President Wahid, who took the first step that ultimately led to the resolution of peace and security in Aceh. His visions began the 1,000-mile journey toward reconciliations. A journey of 1,000 miles in 6 years. There were three main phases in the Aceh Peace Dialogue and Negotiation. One is humanitarian pause from year 2000 to 2001. Second, COHA, cessation of hostilities agreements from 2002 to 2003. And the last one, the Helsinki Dialogue, from January to August 2005. The first and second phases were facilitated by the Henry Dunant Center, based in Geneva, and later known as the Center for Humanitarian Dialogue, or HDC. The third phase was facilitated by former President Martti Ahtisaari of Finland under his own organization called CMI. On humanitarian pause, the phase began in January 2000. Notably, GAM leaders Teguh Hasan Tiro attended the opening of the initial dialogue, though for tactical reasons, he stayed in a separate room within the secret venue Chateau in Bavois, about an hour and a half by car from Geneva. And we maintained the secrecy for quite some time, because in the initial period of negotiations, there is a need to maintain a degree of secrecy. But of course, at home we were criticized by politicians, non-governmental organizations, academics, that the dialogue with GAM mount to recognitions of Aceh as legitimate organizations, and give also GAM an equal status with the governments. The joint understanding on the humanitarian pause was signed in May 2000, framing the talks in humanitarian terms, provided, according to Martin Griffiths, the head of the HDC, a face-saving framework for concessions by both sides, presenting them as noble humanitarian gestures rather than strategic retreats. The primary objectives were to strengthen the will to negotiate, build confidence, and deliver humanitarian assistance to conflict victims. This included facilitating the returns and relocations of internally displaced persons to their villages of origin. A professional security arrangement, a half truce was agreed upon to enable the delivery of aid and maintain space for dialogue. President Wahid appointed me as the chief negotiator for the first phase, although I initially did not understand the reasons. I mentioned earlier that it was GAM leaders who proposed through Mr. Bondan Gunawan, that the government of Indonesia to appoint me as the chief negotiator. Exploratory talks began at the end of 1999 in Geneva at the HDC headquarters, followed by a series of discrete meetings in Bavois. The humanitarian pause, though imperfect, firmly established the commitment of both parties to continue dialogue, even when formal talks stalled. Personal relationship between leaders from both sides allowed for informal problem solving, sometimes literally to talk or negotiate under a tree during the breaks. In January 2001, the parties reached a provisional understanding on elements of future governance of Aceh, containing the seeds of an autonomy framework for Aceh. This proposed a transformations of GAM from an armed movement into a political entity. B, to strengthen joint security arrangement as agreed under the humanitarian pause. However, the Indonesian delegation struggled to convince its own government to endorse the substantive points as autonomy reforms were still being legislated nationwide. Law number 22 of 1999 on local governments, which entered into force in January 1st, 2001. The autonomy versus independence debate remained the central issue throughout the process, with its conceptual development tied closely to the reformation's agenda. These developments within the Indonesian governments negatively affected the process. Number one, the removal of President Wahid from office, a process that took almost 7 months, starting in January until July 2001, causing political instability. B, the successions of President Megawati Soekarno Putri, whose nationalistic approach shaped her policy on dialogue with GAM. And C, my appointment as foreign minister in August 2001, which, coupled with escalations of violence in the field, brought the humanitarian pause to an end. The 9/11 attacks in the United States in September 2001 also shifted the government's priority, further disrupting the Aceh negotiation. For 7 months, namely July 2001 until February 2002, the process stalled. Stability in the coordinating Ministry of Political and Security, held by Dr. Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, provided some continuity. And the appointment of Ambassador Wiriono in December 2001 opened a new chapter of negotiations called the Cessation of Hostilities Agreement, or COHA. The negotiation can succeed when in the field the forces of both sides are engaged in continuous fighting. As a result, no negotiations can succeed when in the field the forces of both sides are engaged in continuous fighting. The security arrangement under the humanitarian pause had always been temporary, designed solely to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian relief assistance to victims and displaced persons, as well as to serve as confidence-building measures. Once its limited mandate expired, there was no effective mechanism to maintain calm. Negotiating a ceasefire in the context of guerrilla war is an especially difficult exercise. Unlike conventional conflicts, there is no clear and defined boundary line of demarcations, and the distinction between combatants and non-combatants is often blurred. These confusions complicates the task of monitoring compliance, and the cost of deploying and sustaining effective monitoring missions is also substantial, requiring both financial resources and political will. Despite these challenges, the second phase of dialogue focused on achieving a cessation of hostilities agreement, or COHA. The Government of Indonesia's strategy during this phase rested on 3 interconnected course of actions. A, the conflict would be brought to an end through a transitional period, at the conclusion of which spatial autonomy arrangement could be accepted as the final solutions. B, during the transitional period, hostilities would cease entirely, confidence building measures would be intensified, and socio-economic life in Aceh would be normalized with humanitarian and development assistance from both the Government of Indonesia and the international community. All-inclusive dialogue would be held among all elements of Acehnese society, including GAM, as a consultative forum for achieving a peaceful negotiated settlement based on the spatial autonomy law, namely law on Mangrove Aceh Darussalam. This framework envisions that in due course, a general election will be held in which GAM could participate as provincial political party. So actually at this stage, we envisage a local political party would be established. This is a crucial point at the very last day of the Helsinki meeting. I'll come back on this later on. The matter of local political parties would resurface in the Helsinki process, becoming a decisive issue in the final moments before the signing of the 2005 Memorandum of Understanding. For the purpose of sharing the cost of ceasefire, monitoring team and mobilizing humanitarian and economic assistance, the government began to internationalize the process. Well-intentioned, this step introduced new complexities. The participation of multiple foreign governments and international organizations brought with it a diverse and sometimes competing interests, making compromise more difficult. The COHA process was ultimately disrupted by two critical events. Number one, the arrest of 5 members of the GAM delegations in Banda Aceh on the eve of their departure for Tokyo conference. This abrupt move undermined trust and sent a damaging signal to the GAM leadership. And B, the launching of major combined military and police operation in Aceh, involving approximately 30,000 personnel. This effectively brought the COHA dialogue process to an end. The military operations continued until December 26, 2004, when a catastrophic earthquake and tsunami struck Aceh and North Sumatra. The scale of the disaster was unprecedented, causing immense loss of life and destructions and its immediate aftermath. The military operation was halted for the sake of saving lives and facilitating the massive humanitarian response. Both the governments and GAM agreed to an informal ceasefire. This tragedy also created an unexpected opportunity. The shared imperative to address the humanitarian crisis inspired both sides to reconsider a dialogue. The sense of urgency, coupled with the recognitions that cooperation could yield tangible benefits for the Acehnese people, provided new momentum for peace. In conclusions, 20 years after the signing of the Helsinki agreements, we stand at a vantage point where it is possible to view the process in its entirety, its beginnings, its struggles, and its ultimate success. The road to peace in Aceh was neither smooth nor inevitable. It was a journey marked by false starts, broken ceasefire, and moments when trust seems impossible to rebuild. Yet the perseverance of those involved on both sides of the conflicts prove that dialogue remains the most durable path of lasting peace. The Aceh process offers several enduring observations. First, peace processes are rarely linear. The initial humanitarian pause and the Koha phases failed to produce a final settlement, but they laid the groundwork for Helsinki talks by building personal relationships, developed a shared understanding, and familiarizing each other with others' constraints. Each phase, even when it ended apparent failures, left behind elements that proved useful later. Second, domestic political transformations can change the entire equations. Without Reformasi's era's commitment to decentralize and democratize the governments, the concept of specific autonomy, rather spatial autonomy, would not have been politically acceptable to Jakarta or credible to Aceh. Similarly, the willingness of successive presidents, despite differences of ideological and political base, to keep the door open for dialogue ensured that momentum was never completely lost. Third, leaderships at critical moments can make the difference between peace and protracted war. President Abdurrahman Wahid took politically risky step of opening dialogue when the military solution still seems dominant in Jakarta. President Megawati Soekarno Putri authorized Koha despite her more nationalistic instinct, signifies a readiness to experiments with non-military approach. President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, together with Vice President Yusuf Kala, seized post-tsunami moment to push for a decisive agreement, working closely with Marty Ahtisaari to ensure that Helsinki process did not stall. Fourth, timing is everything. The 2004 tsunami was a tragedy of immense proportions, but it created a rare convergence of humanitarian urgency, international attentions, and political opportunities. Both the government and GAM recognize that such a moment might never come again. The speed with which the Helsinki process was conducted, just 5 months from the first round to the signing of the MOU, reflected an acute awareness that the political window was narrow. Finally, international facilitations works best when it is clear, firm, and time-bound. Artisaris with mediators combine empathy with disciplines. Discussions were focused, deadlines were respected, and parties were reminded that the alternative to agreement was a return to war. The involvement of the AU-led Aceh Monitoring Missions with ASEAN participations provided credible oversights without undermining Indonesian sovereignty. 2 decades on, Aceh Peace has held There have been challenges, of course, disputes over the implementation of autonomy provisions, local political rivalries, and questions about economic development. But the guns have remained silent. This is in itself a remarkable achievement and a testament to the power of negotiated settlements. A lesson learned for the future. The Aceh peace process is not just a historical episode. It is a living case study in conflict resolutions. For Indonesia, it serves as a model of how domestic conflicts, especially those with separatist elements, can be addressed without sacrificing sovereignty. For the international community, it is an example of how regions and global actors can play a constructive role without dominating the process. Several lessons emerge for the future. Number one, clarity of objectives. From the outset, both sides in Aceh were clear, if not always in public, about what they could and could not accept. The government would not concede independence. GAM eventually accepted that autonomy within Indonesia was the most realistic outcome. This clarity allowed negotiation to focus on workable arrangements rather than endless debates over absolutes. Number two, paced approaches. Attempt to solve everything at once is a recipe for a deadlock. The paced approach in Aceh, though frustrating at times, allowed both parties to test each other intentions, build limited trust, and accumulate agreements on less contentious issues before taking the core questions. Number three, the role of personal relationship. Formal talks matters, but so do informal channels. The trust built under the tree, between quotations, in Bavaria or during coffee break in Helsinki was often as important as what was said in the plenary sessions. Conflict resolution is as much about human connections as it is about political calculations. Number four, preparedness for the unexpected. The tsunami was not a planned part of the peace process, but it was leveraged quickly and effectively in connections, resolution, in conflict resolutions. Crises, whether humanitarian, political, and economics, can become opportunities if leaders are ready to act decisively. Five, sustaining peace beyond the agreements. The signing of peace agreement is not only the beginning. Signing of a peace agreement is only the beginning. Implementations requires patience, resources, and political commitment. In Aceh, the presence of the Aceh Monitoring Missions for a fixed but significant period helped to reassure both sides that the commitments made in Helsinki would be honored. As we reflect on 20 years of peace in Aceh, it is worth remembering that diplomacy is often about creating possibilities where none seem to exist. The 1,000-mile journey that began with a hesitant step in year 2000 did not proceed without detours, but it reached its destination because both sides, in the end, choose the path of peace over certainty of continued conflict. The Aceh experience should give confidence to those facing seemingly intractable disputes today. It reminds us that even the longest and most bitter conflicts can be resolved when there is courage to start, discipline to continue, and wisdom to compromise. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, His Excellency Hasan Wirayuda, for sharing your candid experience and also lesson learned during a tough period of conflict resolution. We have learned a lot from you. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to invite the next speaker. He is the Executive Director of ASEAN IPR. Please welcome to the stage His Excellency I Gusti Agung Wesaka Puja.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Actually, I feel very touched for this moment as a 20 years or probably 25 years of the Aceh peace processes. Let me first express my feeling. This is like a deja vu for me, back to 25 years when actually we started these peace processes with Pak Hasan. However, before proceed with my storytelling, mostly probably in my presentations, I just would like to take this opportunity to pay tribute, especially to the victims of the conflicts in Aceh. And in particular, three of my good friends, close friends, who very much actually involved in these peace processes since the year 2000. First, of course, my former senior ambassador, Ambassador Yudhoyono, who actually led the second phase of these peace processes during the cessation of hostilities agreement. He passed away a couple of years ago, and he is in the heroes' cemeteries now. Rest in peace. Secondly, my roommate actually, when we had this negotiation in Helsinki, Dr. Farid Hussein, also he passed away a couple of years ago. And the third is General Usman Basa, who actually tirelessly from the military sides follow very closely and give us advice during the Helsinki processes. And one person actually probably is not much mentioned during the Koha peace processes. He is an Acehnese, also passed away. He is in the rest in peace in the cemetery, hero cemeteries now. Mr. Amran Samzani, he is an Acehnese. Four of those colleagues I really would like to pay tribute for their tireless and dedications and wholehearted, sincere efforts to bring peace for Acehnese people. Of course, indeed, I would like to pay tribute to President Gus Dur, who actually initiated this process. Probably first, I just would like to make a disclaimer before proceeding. In these peace processes for the year 2000 until 2005, I'm very lucky that I was part of this failure and the success of the peace processes from the year 2000 to 2005. I serve for presidents during these peace processes: President Gus Dur, President Megawati, President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, and President Marty Ahtisaari of, of Finland. I serve only one foreign minister, Pak Hasan Wirayuda. During this time, you can imagine there's only the foreign minister who dedicated for these peace processes. I serve three chief of negotiator from Indonesia. First, of course, Pak Hasan. When only two of us actually first in January 2000 went to Bafua to start these peace processes. Secondly, the chief negotiator, of course, Ambassador Wiryono, as I said, who already passed away. And the third one was Pak Hamid Awaludin, who you met a couple of days ago here. So with this disclaimer, I just would like to make a clarification. Also. First, Aceh peace process is not 20 years, but in fact, we started 25 years, January 2000s. Of course, that's 5 years of, I said it's like roller coasters, periods, ups and down, very, very deeply, until Koha collapsed, and then followed by tsunami, and then we continued again in January 2005 with the Helsinki processes. The second clarification, many said that, oh, this is an intrastate conflict, so that's why the government did not involve the foreign ministry. But the fact is actually, even during the first efforts of the peace processes, the foreign ministry officials already there, which is Pak Hasan and myself, and the second part of the peace processes during the Koha, Ambassador Wiryono was actually a career diplomat. Of course, at the beginning of the peace processes, the government didn't want to internationalize the process. That's why the government, I recalled in the year 2000, January, when Pak Hasan was appointed as a chief negotiator, the government of Indonesia cautiously tried to explain to the public the appointment of Pak Hasan Wirayuda. There is no relation whatsoever with his status as the permanent representative of Indonesia in Geneva. So it was very, very clear, crystal clear that time how the government tried to make a very distinct line. This is not international issues. This is a very domestic issue. That's for the clarification. Now, a fact check. Of course, you are fully aware about the Helsinki Agreement, signed 15th of August 2005. This is actually one of the shortest peace agreement. You can check it, the peace agreement. One of the shortest peace agreement was, of course, to tell you frankly, actually, there was another even shorter version of the agreement when in May 2000, Pak Hasan mentioning about the humanitarian pause. There was a document, it's called Joint Understanding for Humanitarian Pause, even shorter than MOU Helsinki. Second, a fact check, only 7 months negotiations. Some peace processes were negotiated for many, many years, even without no promise of success. But this MOU Helsinki was negotiated only 7 months with the 5 rounds of negotiation, but 6 actually, but people only 5, but 6, including the visit of Pak Hamid Awaludin and accompanied by myself, only 2 of us, in the very humble apartment of President Marty Ahtisaari to give a final touch of the Helsinki Agreement. On amnesty, it was taken only 2 weeks to exercise to complete the amnesties, those who are political prisoners, from 17th to 30th of August 2005. About 1,424 political prisoners were released that time. I believe generals observe also these processes. AMM, Aceh Monitoring Missions, only 16 months from September 2005 to December 2006. Even though it's called monitoring mission, but there was no such military nuances in this. That's why it's called a civilian mission, was a step up, just to avoid this is something military operations. That's why the chief of this AMM was appointed Mr. Peter Veit from European Union, a civilian diplomats. And the decommissioning process for 840 guns, I don't know whether this is a real gun or plastic guns or whatever, it's only 3 months basically, or 4 months, from September to December 2005. General was here, actually part of this AMM, General Nepat. A redeployment of the police and military only took 4 months, which about 31,000 police and military were redeployed out from Aceh. So another fact check actually that I wish to share with you. We know only a couple of documents, COHA, Cessation of Hostilities Agreement, and MOU Helsinki. But in fact, if you look at from the year 2000 until 2005, at least there are 5 documents signed by the two sides. Of course, the first one is the humanitarian pause in May 2000. Secondly, what is called provisional understanding in January 2001. Third, joint statement 10 of May 2002. This is focused mostly on the autonomy. Of course, later on, GAM, the Free Aceh Movement and the Indonesian government has different interpretation of this autonomy, because for the GAM, they thought this autonomy is pathways to independence. And for the Indonesian government, this is the model that they proposed to GAM for GAM to accept. And of course, the COHA, Cessation of Hostilities Agreement, on 9 of December 2002, of course, then proceeded by, it was actually, before the COHA was signed, there was an event, big event in Tokyo. It was on the 3rd of December 2002, in which donors countries gathered in Tokyo, especially initiated by the US and Japan, to finance this humanitarian project and also for the COHA operations. And of course, the last one is the Helsinki Agreement on 15th of August 2005. So if you learn about the conflicts, peace processes in Aceh, at least there are 5 important documents signed by the two sides. Now, I just would like to share with you the general principles of this conflict situation in Aceh. First, I think both sides very much in the same boat and in the same opinion that give peace a chance. So give peace a chance, because they experienced for more than 25 years of military conflicts, but no whatsoever successful outcomes from those military conflicts. And of course, there is no such an instant conflict resolution from this conflict. So enter the second one, enter negotiations if all parties have the intention to negotiate. So that's the fact that both sides, the Government of Indonesia and the Free Aceh Movement, agreed to enter the, of course, in the first effort, it was so difficult to bring the Free Aceh Movement, and also from Indonesian side, especially from the military side, to sit on equal footing with the Free Aceh Movement. So the third principle, peace processes has never been easy. It takes several years to strike a durable peace deal. So, of course, a peace deal is not the ultimate goal. This process is ups and downs, and we experienced this since 5 years ago. And not all issues can be resolved at once at an early stage of the negotiations. So why Aceh peace processes took 5 years so long. And this is very important, actually. This is what Pak Hasan started from the very beginning. Building mutual trust and confidence among parties involved is paramount importance. We thought building trust from the very beginning. I don't know how long the peace processes would take. So then I would like to fill in a little bit what Pak Hasan has been mentioned, because after Pak Hasan's presentations, I feel, I don't have nothing to add, actually, because that's probably what I would like to share with you. There's something behind the scene which not everybody aware about what actually happened behind the scene, which is even more fascinating. Of course, Pak Hasan already mentioning about the momentum, the democratizations, the political will of the leadership of the two sides, and the tsunami which bring these noble efforts to be realized. But before that, actually, before the process of the peace negotiations started, I recall last year I was in Jeddah on mediations conference. Suddenly, Pak Hasan, I met somebody which very probably monumental during the first day of the Aceh peace processes. His name is Sultan Barakat. I don't know whether still remember. The good friend of Martin Griffiths. There's actually two of them, Martin Griffiths and Sultan Barakat, in the year 1999, even before the session of hostility, the Jeddah Kemanusiaan Humanitarian Post started. Both of them met President Abdurrahman Wahid. Then I did actually recall what the conversation between Sultan Barakat and President Gus Dur at that time. Then Sultan Barakat reminded me, "Hey Puja, you still remember what Gus Dur said to me?" Apparently, Gus Dur said to Sultan Barakat, apparently to bring peace in Aceh, we need a sultan. This is because of Sultan Barakat names. That's what Sultan Barakat reminded me about this conversation. And of course, Gus Dur very fascinated with two heroes. That's why probably why he chose Henry Dunant Center to mediating this. First, Nightingale, Florence Nightingale's, the woman heroes, the French woman heroes. The second one is Henry Dunant himself, is Henry Dunan, the Pramuka now become the scout, and of course the use is for the ICRC. That's probably for those reasons why Gus Dur so impressed with Henry Dunan Center at that time. And in January 2000, Gus Dur flew to Geneva prior to his meeting in Davos for the World Economic Forum. You recall, but in the evening, Gus Dur stopped over in the office of the Henry Dunan Center. All diplomats in Geneva were there, just would like to listen what would be the peace processes offered by President Gus Dur. But instead of discussing the Aceh peace processes, Gus Dur that time, most of the time, just talking about General Wiranto, about the dismissal of General Wiranto. I don't know what the hard feeling that time, but Pak Hasan still remember that. I asked Pak Hasan after the end of this meeting, Pak Hasan, what should I report to the government? Because Gus Dur always mentioning about dismissing General Wiranto. So Pak Hasan said, no, don't write anything to the government. Even Gus Dur himself, he said about the dismissal of General Wiranto. And then the following week, of course, after Davos, and then Pak Hasan asked me, Puja, let's go. I didn't know actually after Pak Hasan came back from Jakarta that time, suddenly he asked me, Puja, you rent a car early in the morning in January. Where are we going, Pa? We are going to Bafua. This Pa Hasan mentioned about that. We went to Bafua. Please make sure that nobody follow us. That's why we drove, I remember, Pa, the BMW, the color is green. An automatic car. It was the first ever time in my life I drove an automatic car. And we left the office at 1 a.m. in the morning. When everybody in the office left already, nobody knows. We miss in action for almost 1 week. Nobody knows where we were that time. And we drove this car at 1 a.m. January. You can imagine, so foggy. It's only 1 meters the site. 1 a.m. in the morning to Bafua to meet this GAM leaderships the following day. It was a fascinating story. That's why there was a lot of dramas during the first day, during the humanitarian pause. I called this meeting, the first day of the meeting of the humanitarian pause, as an Hasan Summit. You know, that's why I called it Hasan Summit, because Indonesian delegation chaired by Hasan Wirayuda, the GAM side chaired by Hasan Tiro, and another factions of GAM that time from MB GAM, Majelis or Musyawarah Besar GAM from Malaysia, chaired by Husaini Hasan. And then another Hasan, actually, one of our delegation, Pak Hasan remembered, is a lady delegation, a female, the only female delegation who involved in this peace negotiation. Her name is Naima Hasan. Can you imagine this? By coincidence, all Hasan's name just suddenly came up, and that's why I call Hasan Summit. This is a fascinating story. Of course, we went to Bafua, and momentum actually created even before that. As I said, that's after Tokyo meeting failed, and then tsunami. No, it was even before tsunami, because another impression also, of the public thought that the Helsinki processes, the Aceh peace processes, triggered by tsunami. No, not because of the tsunami. Even before tsunami, as I said, this humanitarian pause started in January, and then the Cessation of Hostilities Agreement in 2002. And prior to the tsunami, if you recall, in August 2003, the pre-negotiation and reconciliatory building trust has been done actually by Indonesian government. So this is also another momentum. I recall that after tsunami in January 2025, before we went to Helsinki, Pak Hamid called me, "Hey Puja, you draft an agreement in which you have to put inside first how you can address our Indonesian gratitude to the Acehnese people, in which you recall, I still remember that during the fight, during the independence fight, Acehnese provided us with airplane, Solawa, to bring weapons from Burma that time. So we have to pay back. We have to pay back the generosity of Acehnese people by giving them back a new airplane. So that's the initial thinking. Second, also the compensation. Think about the compensation. When the GAM surrendered their weapons, so what in return that we have to give them? So think about giving them land, for example, for compensation. Third one, think also about the new autonomy. So just copy and paste the Papuan autonomy for the concept in the agreement. So that's a three element. I remember that when Pak Hamid called me for the, of course, it's not so detailed, but it's only a very general. So the second thing I would like to share with you, this process, a lot of make it or break it. Of course, the very beginning, there are a lot of critics actually from the politicians, from the military, from the member of the parliament about this process, because the parliament, the member of parliament, they thought that the government did not consult them on this process. That's why they feel blank about this process. On the humanitarian pause, during the process, I told you there are two GAM factions actually were in Papua. You remember, Pasan, the GAM from Sweden, Swedish GAM held by Hassan Tiro and Malik Mahmud. And also another factions of GAM was the MB GAM by Hussaini Hassan. And during the first day of the meeting, of course, the meeting was separated, not at the same time. And apparently, the Swedish GAM did not aware that there was another GAM, faction GAM, also in Papua at that time. I don't know what happened that time. Then the Swedish GAM knew that MB GAM was there, and then you recall they boycotted, and then they didn't want to meet us again unless the MB GAM were kicked out from the meeting. So eventually, Henry Dunan Center made the decision. The MB GAM was sent back to out of Papua and did not include it in the negotiation process. During after humanitarian pause and between Human pause and COHA, there was about 7 months pause from July 2000 to February 2002. So a lot of accidents happened, which the situation was deteriorating actually, which make it no appetite for more for negotiating again. And even during the COHA processes before it was signed, GAM many times absent from the meeting. They didn't appear. We came from Jakarta to Geneva, and then they simply didn't show up. So that's why it's hard to determine how to build the trust and confidence if one of the party was not there. And even during the very last day of the negotiation of the text of decision of a peace agreement on 8th of December 2002, one day prior to the signing, General Yudhoyono was there also in the room in Hotel Intercontinental in Geneva. We were there, the five negotiating team from Indonesia. General Yudhoyono was there, and SBY as Menko Polhukam that time, it was the first time I heard he raised his very, very high voice because he tried to salvage, because there was almost a deadlock during that time. This because of the issue of locking, decommissioning, and a lot of pressure from Aceh at that time, especially from the military, because there was already efforts of ambushing the GAM by the military. Only need instruction from Geneva actually. If the COHA failed, then there would be a strike to the GAM that time. And of course, Indonesian delegation that time wished to bring peace to back to Indonesia. That's why President SBY is so determined that COHA should be signed. Then it was he raised his voice actually from somebody calling from Aceh. That he said, "Give me 3 hours to solve this problem." I mean, because of the deadlock on the issue of locking, so we tried to extend the negotiation, but the pressure actually then to us, to the negotiator, 5 of us, and we dismissed from the room. Bapak General listened that time. We went back to our room and then trying to find out the strategy, how to salvage, how to reach the agreement by tomorrow on the 9th of August. A lot of pressure for the delegation. And then Pak Wir said, okay, please call Martin Griffiths and Andrew Marshall that time from Henry Dunant Center to our room. And then actually our strategy that time, Pak Wir, those who knows Pak Wir, Pak Hasan knows Pak Wir, he really gave a pressure to Henry Dunant Center that we come to a strategy that we blame Henry Dunant Center. They have no capacity, they have no willingness to solve the problem. And of course, this very pressure to Henry Dunant Center actually gave another boost to Henry Dunant Center to try and negotiate again with GAM to find solutions. Then the following day, early at 4 o'clock in the morning, Martin Griffiths called me. Hey Puja, GAM agreed on the locking. Because actually, I said the locking problems that time actually on the decommissioning. Because we proposed 3 locks for, or 3 keys for the decommissioning for GAM's guns to be deposited, but GAM refused. They want only one hold by them. But I said it's not the commissioning if you only have your own keys in this respect. And finally, after back and forth, and okay, 2 keys, but the second key held by Henry Dunant Center. We give trust to Henry Dunant Center. If something happened, we blame the Henry Dunant Center for breaching the cessation of hostilities agreement. So finally, on the 9th of August, we signed the agreement. Then, if you remember also, the first day of negotiation in Helsinki, also in January 2005, it was almost broke because of the refusal of GAM to see the video of tsunami. We proposed, actually, Indonesian delegation proposed, hey, that is for the icebreaker, actually. Hey, let's see this video. And then we gave a sympathy to the victims but GAM refused to those video to be shown. And the Indonesian delegation insisted this should be shown. But that time was so crucial. Even the first day of the negotiation almost broke. And we are ready actually to pack and going back to Jakarta. But Marty Ahtisaari so skillfully actually persuaded us, okay, we tried find solutions, how to deal with the video. And then we agreed then later on, the video was not shown, but Pa Sofyan Jalil, one of our negotiator, to tell from his own mouth about the situation of tsunami in Aceh. So, of course, the process is ups and down. I don't know how much time I have. I can tell you all behind the scenes and storytellings for 2 days. So it's done? Yeah. Okay, I just would like to conclude. Ups and down the process, and war and diplomacy is very, very crucial at that time. That's why during the 8th of December 2002, diplomacy prevailed. That's why we could prevent the bloodshed in Aceh, because then COHA was signed. But on the contrary, in May 2003, when COHA failed in Tokyo, immediately after midnight in May 2003, there's a bloodshed again because of the failure of diplomacy. My another point is, of course, the evil is in the detail, because we discuss lot on the details in the COHA or in the MOU Helsinki. Well, so I would like to conclude actually. I still have so long issues, including the sensitive issues. I could send in, and of course, lesson learned. But anyway, so I just would like to conclude that goodwill alone will not achieve peace. But the most important is we need strategy in peace processes. As Pa Hasan also mentions, we need a joint ownership, and both the agreement and also the follow-up. Of course, if you look at again the MOU Helsinki, the first paragraph, actually that's the spirit of the MOU, of the agreement. It is said in the first paragraph, the very first paragraph of the MOU Helsinki, I quote, confirm their commitment to a peaceful, comprehensive, and sustainable solutions to the conflict with, I underlined, dignity for all. That's actually for the dignity for all. For 5 years, we fight for the peace agreement in Aceh. Thank you so much. Domo arigatou gozaimasu. Otsukare sama desita.
Thank you, His Excellency Puja, for sharing, as you mentioned, the ups and downs story of this long-standing peace building process. Now, next agenda, please allow me to call to give us reflections from the Indonesia Military Armed Forces. Please allow me to call the former Chief Commander of the Indonesian Armed Forces, General Endiartono Surtarto.
Well, Excellency, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I sincerely apologize as I will deliver my speech in Bahasa Indonesia due to my English is not too good for you to follow. However, I provided copies of the English version of my speech. And if you wish to have, please contact the area staff. They will be help you. Thank you. Let's start the speech. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera. Suatu kehormatan bagi saya atas kesempatan yang diberikan untuk berbicara pada acara yang sangat istimewa ini, yaitu peringatan 20 tahun Perjanjian Damai Aceh. Izinkanlah saya untuk menyampaikan terima kasih saya kepada Bapak Tetsuya Watanabe, President of ERIA, Pak Nobuhiro Aisawa, Dean of ERIA School and Government, dan seluruh staf dari ERIA atas terlaksananya acara ini. Menurut saya acara ini syarat akan pelajaran yang dapat kita petik bukan hanya bagi bangsa Indonesia, tetapi juga bagi bangsa-bangsa lain. Sebuah pelajaran berharga dalam kita membangun upaya damai guna dapat menyelesaikan konflik yang terjadi secara bermartabat untuk kepentingan kemanusiaan, kepentingan bangsa dan negara. Saya akan mendahului dengan sedikit sejarah singkat dari Provinsi Aceh. Provinsi Aceh adalah suatu provinsi penting di Indonesia dengan latar belakang kekayaan akan sejarah dan budayanya. Aceh merupakan tempat awal dari berkembangnya Islam di Indonesia dan juga di Asia Tenggara. Karenanya tidaklah mengherankan apabila Aceh dikenal sebagai serambi Mekah. Masyarakatnya yang heroik dan punya ketahanan yang hebat telah membuat Aceh menjadi daerah terakhir yang dapat dikuasai oleh penjajah Belanda. Ketika Republik Indonesia memproklamasikan kemerdekaannya di tahun 1945, Aceh merupakan salah satu yang pertama sekali menyatakan dukungannya kepada Republik Indonesia. Dan di tahun 1948, masyarakat Aceh dari berbagai kalangan telah secara sukarela mendonasikan hartanya dalam membantu pemerintah Indonesia untuk membeli sebuah pesawat kali pertama yang kemudian diberi nama Selawah dengan kode RI-001 yang itu kemudian menjadi cikal bakal dari maskapai Garuda Indonesia. Namun demikian sangatlah disayangkan kompleksitas dari gabungan kekecewaan antara rasa keadilan, keinginan untuk mendapatkan otonomi lebih luas, dan keinginan untuk menerapkan syariat Islam yang tidak terlaksana, telah menyulut terjadinya konflik berkepanjangan. Selama bertahun-tahun, berbagai upaya telah dilakukan, termasuk juga upaya damai untuk menyelesaikannya, namun hal tersebut tidak membawa hasil maksimal. Dan baru pada tahun 2005, perdamaian itu akhirnya dapat juga dicapai, yang semoga menjadi sebuah perdamaian abadi. Sejarah berdirinya insurgensi di Aceh berawal pada tanggal 20 September 1953 ketika Daud Bereh, mantan gubernur militer Aceh semasa perang kemerdekaan, mendeklarasikan kemerdekaan negara Islam Aceh, bagian dari negara Islam Indonesia. Dan sebagai jawaban atas keputusan tersebut, Presiden Soekarno sebagai jawaban atas keputusan Presiden Soekarno yang menurunkan status daerah khusus Aceh menjadi bagian dari Provinsi Sumatera Utara, di mana hal tersebut telah menimbulkan kekecewaan berat di kalangan masyarakat Aceh. Akibat dari deklarasi tersebut, Presiden Soekarno memutuskan untuk melancarkan operasi militer, namun juga diselingi dengan beberapa kali upaya damai, yang kemudian membuahkan hasil melalui kesepakatan yang ditandatangani oleh Daud Bereh dengan Komandan Resort Militer Aceh pada Desember 1962. Namun demikian, tidaklah semua masyarakat Aceh dapat menerima kesepakatan tersebut, dan aspirasi untuk mereka untuk merdeka masih tetap tersimpan di hati sebagian masyarakat Aceh. Karena saya berbicara tentang gerakan Aceh Merdeka, di tahun 1976, kesepakatan damai tahun 1962 harus berakhir. Tengku Hassan Ditiro, keluarga di pahlawan nasional, Tengku Cik Ditiro, menyatakan berdirinya gerakan Aceh Merdeka yang bertujuan untuk melanjutkan aspirasi dari Daud Bereh dalam mendirikan negara Islam Aceh. Presiden Soeharto memandang hal tersebut sebagai sebuah tantangan serius pada persatuan dan kesatuan bangsa dan memutuskan untuk menyelesaikannya melalui operasi militer. Namun keputusan tersebut telah menyebabkan meningkatnya antipati masyarakat Aceh pada pemerintah pusat. Dan di tahun 1989, situasi konflik semakin membesar. Pemerintah kemudian menyatakan Aceh dalam status daerah operasi militer yang memberikan kewenangan lebih kepada militer untuk dapat segera menyelesaikan konflik tersebut. Walaupun di awal tahun 1990, konflik bersenjata di Aceh menurun secara signifikan, namun operasi militer telah meninggalkan luka di hati masyarakat Aceh. Turunnya Presiden Soeharto di tahun 1998 membawa dinamika baru atas konflik di Aceh. Presiden Habibie sebagai pengganti Pak Harto mendapatkan ruang untuk menggunakan cara-cara lain di luar operasi militer. Pada 7 Agustus 1998, Panglima ABRI Jenderal TNI Wiranto mengumumkan pencabutan status DOM di Aceh. Lalu beberapa hari kemudian, di Hari Kemerdekaan Indonesia di tanggal 17 Agustus 1998, Presiden Habibie menyatakan permintaan maaf secara resmi kepada masyarakat Aceh yang diikuti dengan keputusan bahwa Provinsi Aceh dinyatakan sebagai daerah khusus. Kesemuanya itu dilakukan sebagai upaya untuk dapat mengembalikan kepercayaan masyarakat Aceh kepada pemerintah pusat. Namun gelombang sentimen anti-militer dan anti-Jakarta yang kala itu tengah berkecamuk saat itu di berbagai daerah, bukan hanya di Jakarta tapi juga di berbagai daerah termasuk di Aceh, membuka peluang bagi GAM untuk memodifikasi strateginya dan juga untuk meningkatkan kekuatan. Yang ini semua berakibat hanya tidak meredanya, bukan justru meredanya konflik, namun justru memberikan tantangan yang semakin serius dibandingkan dengan waktu-waktu sebelumnya. Pada pandangan saya, Terjadinya transformasi GAM ini disebabkan oleh adanya 3 faktor utama. Yang pertama, akibat dari operasi lawan insurgensi yang dilancarkan pada tahun 1989-1998. Bagaimanapun juga, perang pasti telah menyebabkan banyak penderitaan di kalangan masyarakat. Pasti. Tidak ada yang perang yang tidak menyebabkan penderitaan di masyarakat. Kita lihat yang sekarang, yang ada di hadapan kita pada saat-saat ini. Perang di Palestina, perang dimanapun yang saat ini tengah terjadi, termasuk di Thailand dan di Kamboja, akhirnya adalah rakyat. Kedua, adanya rasa ketidakpuasan masyarakat atas pelaksanaan otonomi khusus yang antara lain disebabkan oleh tidak optimalnya Pemda Aceh dalam melaksanakan pembangunan dan perbaikan kehidupan masyarakat. Ditambah pada saat itu adanya kasus korupsi di kalangan Pemda yang menyebabkan masyarakat makin kecewa. Dan faktor ketiga adalah adanya kesempatan yang kemudian dimanfaatkan oleh pihak GAM seperti yang saya telah uraikan di atas, serta juga pada saat pelaksanaan proses perdamaian yang sebetulnya telah disepakati bersama, yaitu saat jeda kemanusiaan, humanitarian pause, dan penghentian permusuhan, cessation of hostility agreement pada tahun 2000 hingga Mei 2003. Pada faktor pertama dan kedua sangatlah bisa saya pahami. Kalau hal tersebut telah mendorong masyarakat Aceh untuk mendukung bahkan bergabung dengan GAM. Karena sebagai layaknya manusia biasa, masyarakat Aceh tentu wajar untuk mau atau menginginkan adanya perubahan pada kehidupan yang lebih baik. Namun tidaklah demikian pada faktor yang ketiga. Dengan rasa hormat saya kepada pihak GAM, saya meminta maaf bahwa saya harus menyampaikan hal ini. Saya meminta maaf karena sungguh saya sangat menyesalkan bahwa di tengah harapan untuk tercapainya kedamaian yang sudah lama didambakan dan sudah berada di depan mata, GAM justru memanfaatkan proses perdamaian yang tengah berjalan untuk mengembangkan strategi politiknya, melakukan propaganda dan upaya-upaya lain untuk memperoleh perhatian dan dukungan internasional. Lebih jauh lagi, GAM telah menggunakan kesempatan saat TNI mengendurkan tekanannya di dalam mendukung pelaksanaan perdamaian yang pada saat itu adalah perintah saya agar mereka tidak lagi melakukan operasi, TNI tidak lagi melakukan operasi ofensif pada saat jeda kemanusiaan dan juga penghentian permusuhan. Namun demikian, oleh pihak GAM, hal tersebut justru digunakan untuk melakukan pengembangan organisasi, peningkatan rekrutmen, mengintensifkan pelatihan, dan secara terbuka melakukan penolakan seperti tadi disampaikan atas pelaksanaan penghancuran senjata yang itu seharusnya dilakukan pada fase yang ditentukan, namun mereka menolaknya secara terbuka. Sungguh sangat saya menyayangkannya. Sekali lagi saya harus minta maaf yang sebesar-besarnya apa yang harus saya ucapkan tadi. Namun hal tersebut dikarenakan oleh kekecewaan saya yang besar. Karena proses perdamaian itu sendiri terjadi antara lain karena saran dari Bapak Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono selaku Menko Polkam dan saran dari Pak Bambang Yudhoyono kepada Presiden Megawati Soekarno Putri. Dan juga saran saya pribadi agar dalam menyelesaikan konflik Aceh, kita tidak harus lagi menyelesaikannya melalui cara militer. Akibat dari semua kondisi di atas, gagallah perundingan yang tengah berlangsung di Tokyo pada 18 Mei 2003. Dan sebagai jawaban atas kegagalan tersebut, Presiden Megawati kemudian mendeklarasikan Aceh dalam status darurat militer, martial law, disertai perintah untuk dilaksanakannya operasi pemulihan keamanan. Dalam saya menjalankan perintah Presiden tersebut dan belajar dari pengalaman sebelumnya, selaku Panglima TNI saya mengambil kebijakan meliputi hal-hal sebagai berikut. Para prajurit yang akan dikerahkan untuk melancarkan operasi pemulihan keamanan di Aceh adalah para prajurit yang tidak hanya terlatih dalam bertempur, namun juga harus memiliki pengetahuan cukup untuk bagaimana mereka bisa memenangkan hati dan pikiran rakyat, winning the heart and the mind of the people. Memiliki kemampuan maksimal untuk dapat mencegah terjadinya korban di pihak rakyat. They have to strive to the best of their ability to avoid civilian casualty. Dan juga para prajurit harus benar-benar menjunjung tinggi pada hak asasi manusia. They have to uphold the human right. Dan untuk menjamin kesemua itu dilaksanakan dengan baik, saya menerapkan sistem reward and punishment langsung di lapangan. Dan sebagai pendorong semangat agar setiap prajurit mau memberikan yang terbaik selama pelaksanaan operasi, sebelum diberangkatkan, saya langsung berbicara di hadapan mereka. Dimanapun mereka akan berada, dan kalau kalian telah memberikan prestasi yang terbaik, maka saya akan datang untuk saya berikan kenaikan pangkat luar biasa sebagai penghargaan kepada prajurit yang pantas menerimanya. Namun demikian, saya juga akan datang langsung ke daerah operasi dimanapun mereka berada. Kalau kemudian didapati adanya prajurit yang indisipliner, terlebih apabila itu dilakukan dengan merugikan rakyat, saya akan turunkan pangkatnya langsung atau segera saya kembalikan untuk bisa segera diproses di pengadilan militer. Dan kali pertama itu terjadi di lingkungan Tentara Nasional Indonesia, saya minta para pemilik dari media untuk mau mengajak para jurnalisnya yang secara sukarela bersedia untuk dilatih dan disiapkan dan ditempatkan di unit-unit TNI di daerah operasi dengan maksud agar mereka dapat melihat secara langsung dan mereka akan diminta untuk meliput dari tangan pertama perilaku dari para prajurit selama melaksanakan operasi. Kenapa ini saya lakukan? Karena saya tidak mau lagi apa yang pernah terjadi sebelumnya yang berakibat kemudian masyarakat Aceh itu lebih banyak mendukung GAM, jangan sampai terjadi lagi saat itu. Tsunami. Pada 20 Desember 2004, di tengah situasi ketegangan akibat pertempuran, mega tsunami menerjang Aceh, menyebabkan kehancuran masif secara fisik, ekonomi, dan sosial, dan memberikan dampak penderitaan psikologis yang luar biasa lebih dari 17.000 korban meninggal dan hilang. Dan 1,5 juta orang harus kehilangan tempat tinggal, terisolasi di berbagai tempat. TNI dan GAM menderita banyak kerugian, harus diakui. Namun kekuatan GAM menjadi berkurang secara signifikan. Merespon bencana tersebut, Presiden Yudhoyono memutuskan untuk dilaksanakannya operasi tanggap darurat berskala besar. Tentara dari berbagai negara diundang untuk ikut berpartisipasi. Tercatat setelah Perang Dunia Kedua, operasi tanggap darurat di Aceh merupakan operasi militer selain perang yang terbesar di dunia. The biggest military operation other than war after the Second World War. Dengan tingkat keberhasilan tertinggi pada skala persentase dalam hal penyelamatan manusia akibat bencana. Kita syukuri bahwa di balik kepedihan akibat tsunami ada rahmat yang didapat. Tsunami telah membuka jalan bagi tercapainya perdamaian di Aceh, walaupun tadi barangkali agak berbeda. Tsunami telah menciptakan rasa kemanusiaan bagi semua pihak, yang kemudian mendorong pemerintah Indonesia maupun GAM untuk memulai kembali proses perdamaian. Kedua-dua pihak sama-sama menaruh simpati besar kepada para korban bencana dan menyadari bahwa menolong korban tsunami jauh lebih penting dari melanjutkan konflik. Pada Januari 2005 dengan difasilitasi oleh mantan Presiden Finlandia, Martti Ahtisaari, pemerintah Indonesia dan GAM memulai kembali perundingan damainya di Helsinki. Menteri Hukum dan HAM Pak Hamid Amaluddin memimpin delegasi Indonesia, sementara dari pihak GAM diwakili oleh Perdana Menteri Malik Mahmud. Setelah 5 putaran perundingan yang intensif, akhirnya pada tanggal 15 Agustus 2005, ditandatanganilah kesepakatan Helsinki menandai berakhirnya konflik yang telah berlangsung lebih dari 3 dekade. Hari-hari ini saya sangat bahagia. Masyarakat Aceh menikmati suatu kehidupan baru yang telah lama didambakan. Stabilitas dan kedamaian sudah kembali. Tidak ada lagi suara tembakan yang saling berbalas. Tidak ada lagi suara ledakan, granat maupun bom. Para orang tua tidak lagi merasa khawatir melepas anak-anaknya pergi untuk ke sekolah. Masyarakat Aceh kini bisa bepergian kemanapun tanpa diliputi rasa takut. Tiap orang kini memiliki kesempatan untuk hidup dengan harapan dan kebahagiaan. Dan senyuman muncul dari setiap orang dimanapun di Provinsi Aceh saat ini. Sebelum menutup pembahasan ini, saya akan sampaikan pandangan saya berdasarkan pemahaman saya dan juga didasari oleh pengalaman yang kita dapatkan dari kasus Aceh. Bahwa tugas militer sebagai alat negara adalah menjaga dan mempertahankan kedaulatan negara, keutuhan wilayah, dan keselamatan bangsa. Setiap kebijakan untuk menggunakan kekuatan militer dalam menyelesaikan permasalahan yang berasal dari dalam maupun luar negeri adalah merupakan keputusan dari pemegang kekuasaan negara dengan terlebih dahulu mendapat persetujuan dari otoritas politik yang relevan. Dan ketika keputusan itu diambil, militer harus tunduk untuk melaksanakannya. Dalam kasus konflik Aceh, pemerintah Indonesia telah menerapkan kedua-dua cara penyelesaian, melalui pendekatan militer maupun juga solusi damai. Setelah Presiden memutuskan untuk mengakhiri operasi militer dan menggantikannya dengan cara-cara damai, yang ini sudah disetujui oleh parlemen, maka perintah pertama saya kepada seluruh pasukan yang berada di Aceh adalah hentikan semua operasi ofensif. No more offensive operation. Tidak ada lagi pengejaran dan penghancuran lawan. Limit the activity of the troop. Dan laksanakan patroli hanya untuk pengamanan ke dalam. Conduct a perimeter patrol just for internal security. Sebagai penutup, saya akan mengulangi pernyataan saya di hadapan banyak politisi dari berbagai negara saat dilaksanakannya Shangri-La Dialogue di Singapura. Tidak lama setelah penandatangan kesepakatan damai Aceh, yang saya sampaikan pada saat itu, apabila sebuah negara menghadapi permasalahan, baik itu yang berasal dari dalam maupun luar negeri, seperti adanya klaim wilayah yang tumpang tindih atau permasalahan lainnya, maka gunakanlah militer sebagai upaya terakhir. Namun apabila untuk tujuan kemanusiaan, gunakanlah militer sebagai alat terdepan. Itu berdasarkan pengalaman saya di Aceh, bagaimana hasil maksimal yang didapat dengan dalam operasi kemanusiaan, tetapi tidak begitu maksimal apabila tidak diselingi dengan upaya-upaya lain untuk menyelesaikan masalah konflik. Sekian, terima kasih. Wabillahi taufik wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Terima kasih Bapak Jenderal untuk sharingnya, untuk kepemimpinannya. Terima kasih untuk waktunya Pak hari ini. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have a 30 minutes coffee break. We will have a 1 hour coffee break, and then we will resume our program in 1 hour. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite you to rise as we are welcoming a very special guest. Welcome back, General Lipat, Bapak Hasan. Welcome back, General. Welcome, His Excellency Joko Suyanto. Welcome. Please rise as we welcome Minister Agus Harimurti Yudhoyono. Please rise as we welcome the 6th President of the Republic of Indonesia, Profesor Dr. Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. Excellencies, Profesor Dr. Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, Minister Agus Harimurti Yudhoyono, thank you for coming to ERIA office. It is an honor to have you here with us today. To open this session, please allow me to call the Dean of ERIA School of Government. Please welcome Professor Nobuhiro Aizawa.
Good afternoon. Mr. Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, the sixth President of the Republic of Indonesia. Mr. Agus Harimurti Yudhoyono, the coordinating ministry, and former Foreign Minister Hasan Wirayuda, and former TNI Commander-in-Chief of the Indonesian Armed Forces, Endirartono Sutarto, and Vice Minister of Thailand Prime Minister's Office, General Nipat Thonglek. Ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, excellencies, our dear friends, it is our utmost honor to welcome President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono and all of you. This session is our final session for this 3-day special event in commemorating the historical achievements that the people of Aceh, Indonesia, and all the partners have built together. It was exactly this day, 20 years ago, that our leaders have signed this peace historical agreement. That was a moment when finally the leaders have brought the peace, the belief, and also the hope for the future, especially during the time when everybody was drained with long-lasting conflict and after a devastating disaster of 2004 tsunami. It was a showcase of statesmanship at the highest dignity that the leaders have shown collectively at the decisive moment. And I have to say with strong conviction, it is a history that it must not be forgotten. It is the achievement that we all have to sincerely acknowledge, appreciate, and to study. And this is why we are here to commemorate, here together today. We are here to celebrate and to learn from our leaders. Long and hard effort, struggle, the wisdom and the courage that changed the course of history. We are here to discuss those insights so that we can bring the lessons of Aceh to those who need help to bring peace in their place, in our region and globally. And this is also about the future. We are here celebrating 20 years that the guns were silent, but that doesn't guarantee the future that remains to be peaceful as well. We have to think how to do so, but we would not know how to do so if we don't study how it was done and all the details of how it was done, with whom, to what extent, in what spirit, in what belief, in what principle. We would not know how to modify, repair, strengthen, and to carry on the peace that we all like to see. Yesterday, Professor Humam here asked, has peace won? Maybe yes, but maybe not yet. So we have a major homework today here to do together. And to work together, we need to study together. We need to discuss together. And we are so fortunate today to have President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono sharing his experience, thoughts, and insights that we could not learn from anyone else in this world. We are fortunate to learn from the best leaders we have ever had that took the moment, the decisive moment, that we couldn't have missed. We all thank you for the courage that you have took, especially in the devastating time that was only 2 months in your presidency as well. Hope we can commemorate together today with this high hope and the determination to sustain peace regionally, globally, and to the future through learning this historical Aceh peace process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Aizawa Sensei. Ladies and gentlemen, we now come to a very special moment in our 3-day commemoration. We are going to hear from leaders whose leadership marked an important chapter in our nation's democratic and peace-building journey. It is our privilege to welcome His Excellency Professor Dr. Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono to deliver our commemorative keynote speech today. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to join you today at the ERIA School of Government on the historic occasion, the commemorations of the 20th anniversary of the Aceh Peace Agreement. I wish to begin by expressing my deep gratitude to President Tetsuo Watanabe, Dean Nobuhiro Aizawa, and all the members of ERIA for your kind invitations and for the opportunity to share my reflections with such a distinguished audience. I am pleased and happy because together with us, we have so many prominent figures. They had been playing very significant roles in the long process, road to peace in Aceh. I recognize Dr. Hasan Wirayuda, my good friend, my inner team in solving problems in Aceh, General Indiartono Sutarto, former commander of the TNI, Ambassador Puja is also here. Air Force General Joko Suyanto was also part of the solution. And I also recognize General Nipat Tonglek from Thailand as a peacekeeper during the journey seeking peace in Aceh. I also commend ERIA for your visions to connect this commemoration with the broader missions of cultivating future leaders, leaders who understand the value of peace, dialogue, and regional cooperations. Allow me also to thank all my friends, colleagues, and partners from Indonesia and abroad who have been part of this journey. The Aceh Peace Agreement, signed on 15th of August 2005 in Helsinki, was not the achievement of one individual. It was the collective work of countless people in government, in Aceh, in the National Armed Force and Police, in civil society, and in the international community, who believe that after decades of conflict, peace was possible. I must also note that this commemoration is deeply personal to me. For me, Aceh was never just another province in a vast archipelago. It was a place I had come to know closely long before I became president. Through my visits, my role in government, and my engagement with its leaders and people, I understood the pain of its conflict and the urgency of finding a political solution, peaceful solution. That sense of responsibility stayed with me and guided my leadership when the opportunity to make peace finally arrived. And today, I stand before you not only to celebrate a milestone in our history, but also to reflect honestly on the long road we traveled to reach that point. The lesson we learned along the way and the challenges that remain for Aceh and for peace-building effort around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, 20 years ago today, we were blessed to witness a new milestone in our nation's history, the end of the armed conflict in Aceh. For decades, Indonesia had struggled without success to silence the guns and heal the deep wounds in that province. On that historic day, we finally succeeded, Alhamdulillah. It is only right that 20 years later, we gather here to remember, to commemorate, and to give thanks for the peace that was achieved, for the lives that were spared, and for the opportunity given to the people of Aceh to rebuild their lands, their communities, and their dreams. For me, this is far more than a historical commemoration. I speak to you not only as the President of Indonesia when the Helsinki Agreement was signed, but also as someone who was deeply engaged in the long road that led to that moment. That road was filled with challenges, tests of leadership, and at times, painful setbacks. And I must be honest with history. The reform movement in Indonesia after 1998 created a new political and moral climate, encouraging our leaders to finally end the conflict in Aceh, a conflict that had taken such a heavy toll on the lives and unity of our people. From the start, my conviction was clear that the conflict in Aceh could not and should not be solved through military means alone. While security measures were sometimes unavoidable, they could never address the root causes of the conflict. What Aceh needed was a comprehensive political settlement built on justice, mutual respect, and constitutional integrity. My experience in handling security and political affairs before becoming president convinced me that peace would only come if we engage in sincere dialogue and found common ground that both sides could accept. I do not stand here as a distant observer, but as a participant in that journey. On this occasion, I wish to share with you the essence of what I call the road to peace in Aceh. The road to peace in Aceh was neither straight nor easy. It wound through moments of fragile hope and lingering doubt, through guarded encounters and bold choices, through times when peace felt within grasp, and times when it seemed to slip away. It is this road, with all its trial, turning points, and hard-won breakthrough, that I now wish to share with you. Ladies and gentlemen, when we speak of the Aceh peace process, it is tempting to focus only on the moment in Helsinki, the signing of the peace agreement on the 15th of August 2005. But history is rarely that simple. The Helsinki Agreement was not an isolated event. It was the culmination of a long, often difficult journey that stretched back many years. Through multiple presidencies, through initiatives that succeeded partially, and those that failed entirely, and through countless efforts to bridge the divide between Jakarta and Aceh. This, I should say, the first chapter of this journey began after the fall of the new order, when the reform era opened new political space for dialogue. Under President Habibie, the humanitarian pause was introduced. This was not yet a peace settlement, not yet, but it was an important first step. It was an acknowledgement by both sides that even in conflict, humanitarian needs must be addressed and that dialogue was possible. The next step came under President Abdurrahman Wahid. There was renewed energy to find a peaceful solution, with discussion expanded beyond humanitarian matters to political arrangement. By that time, I was serving as coordinating minister for political and security affairs, and I found myself directly at the forefront of this mission, together with Minister Hasan Wirayuda and General Indriartono Sutarto. Yet the road remained steep. Deep mistrust accumulated over a decade meant that every proposal forced resistance, both in Jakarta and in Aceh. Under President Megawati, effort continued. Again, in my capacity as coordinating minister for political and security affairs, I made more than 1,000 visits to districts and cities across Aceh, meeting ulama or religious leaders, community leaders, local officials, and ordinary citizens to understand their hopes, grievances, and ideas for peace. I also worked to open direct, discreet line of communications with the leadership of the Free Aceh Movement, or GAM. It was during this time that the Geneva Agreement was reached. For a brief moment, there was an optimism that we had found a path forward. But like the humanitarian pause before, the Geneva Agreement struggled in its implementation. Compliance was weak on both sides, and before long, the agreement collapsed. For me, as the government point man on the issue, this felt like an unfinished mission, a historical debt that I hope one day to repay. In 2004, the Indonesian people entrusted me with the presidency. I had campaigned openly on a promise that if elected, I would make ending the Aceh conflict a priority, peacefully, fairly, and with dignity. I also promised to preserve Aceh as an integral part of the Republic of Indonesia. That promise became one of my first call to action. Only 1 month after inauguration, I visited Banda Aceh in November 2004. I publicly invited all sides to sit down and find a political solution. The response was cautious. Some in GAM remained skeptical, but many welcomed the sentiment. I began to earn greater trust from GAM, and trust that, though still fragile, opened the door to deeper dialogue and the real possibility of peace. Then, 1 month later, disaster struck. The Aceh tsunami of the 26th of December 2004, Aceh was devastated beyond imagination. In the midst of that tragedy, I repeated my call for peace. This time, the response was different, more positive. The sheer scale of the catastrophe created a new urgency and a sad awareness that rebuilding Aceh could not be done while guns were still firing. With that shift in mindset, we began preparing for formal negotiation, and everybody knows the process was never easy. There were 5 rounds of talks in Helsinki, each testing the patience and resolve of both delegations. I was directly in charge of the overall directions of this negotiation. My job was to ensure that every discussion stayed within the boundaries of the Constitution, that our sovereignty remained intact, and that every agreement could be implemented without creating political and legal instability. I set the parameter for the delegation, gave the final approval for strategic position, and made the key decision when talk reached critical juncture. When Martti Ahtisaari, former president of Finland and head of the Crisis Management Initiative, CMI, was approached to serve as a mediator in Aceh peace process, he asked to meet me directly to hear from the highest authority what Indonesia truly wanted. His questions were brief and clear. Did I genuinely want him to mediate? And what was my vision as President of Indonesia? My answer were equally direct. Yes, I want you to be a mediator. And I envision at the end of the conflict with Aceh, I will grant it wide-ranging autonomy status, but no independence. From that meeting, Martti and the CMI began their work in earnest. Some issues were especially sensitive. The questions of local political parties had to be resolved in a way that allowed for Aceh's unique status without setting problematic precedent for other provinces. The idea of self-government had to be carefully defined so that it aligned with Indonesia's existing framework for special autonomy. The matter of symbols, such as a flag, had to be handled firmly, since the conflict meant there should be no return to separatist insignia. In 2009, there were political discussions or even questions about who among us deserved the greatest credit for bringing peace to Aceh. Myself as a president, or Vice President Yusuf Kala, or Martti Ahtisaari in his role as mediator. I always regarded such a question as unnecessary, because in my view, this was not the achievement, it was not the achievement of one person, but the collective work of many. I remain deeply grateful to Vice President Yusuf Kala for his important role, and to President Martti Ahtisaari for his effective mediation. Of course, There was no formal division of labor in the Constitution regarding the relation between president and vice president. It is clear that the vice president assists the president in all matters of governance, including in the Aceh peace process. In this case, I was the principal leader and decision maker, while Vice President Yusuf Kala played a supporting role, particularly in maintaining direct communication with the negotiation team in Helsinki. President Marty Ahtisaari, as a mediator, facilitated the process with skill and impartiality, helping to bridge differences and keep dialogue on track. Sometimes it was not easy. Professor Umam knows that. Their engagement were important, but the final responsibility and authority rested with me as president. This distinction is not about diminishing anyone's contribution, but about regarding history as it truly happened. In truth, it was not a matter who did more, but rather how we work as a team with complementary roles that were both essential for success. The political authority had to come from the president, but the intensive engagement and bridge building by vice president and mediator were equally critical. All players were playing really significant roles. I have to admit and I have to recognize it. In fact, many actors were instrumental. The positive roles of the religious and community leaders in Aceh, I have to recognize it. The GAM leadership who were willing to negotiate. The TNI and Polri who supported the process. The parliament and regional government who gave their backing. And our international partner who provided facilitation. Beyond the negotiation table, I should say beyond the, yes, there was another equally important front, building and maintaining trust. I needed the full support of my government, my ministers, the armed forces, the police, and our intelligence services. Decades of conflict had shaped deep institutional habits and perception. Convincing the TNI, for example, that a political settlement could succeed required honest dialogue and a shared commitment to the same goal. I was lucky to have General Indratono Sutarto, who was working real hard with me to convince my colleague general that military operation is not an end. The end is conflict in Aceh can be terminated. Military operation is only means to end. When military operation could not succeed, why don't we think outside the box? Think another thing. Probably political solution is needed. And the history prove that our choice is right. I also reached out to Parliament, to MPR, to DPR deputy, ensuring they understood and backed the process. Alhamdulillah, the Parliament backed our effort. Internationally, I spoke with friends in the United Nations and in Europe to secure understanding and moral support. I went to Australia. I went to Paris with Pak Indratono Sutarto to have a talk. I talked to Kofi Annan, my good friend, because when I was in Bosnia, Kofi Annan was the head of the missions of the United Nations. This broad coalition was essential. Peace could not be the work of the executive branch alone. Finally, on 15 August 2005, the agreement was signed. I remember clearly speaking that day at the presidential palace in Jakarta, welcoming the agreement, but also warning to everybody that the hard work was not over. Peace on paper is one thing. Peace in hearts and minds and daily life is another. The period immediately after Helsinki was, in my view, the most fragile. Yes, I have to say the most fragile one. Trust between former adversaries had to be built from scratch, from the beginning. Implementation of the agreement had to be carefully managed through legislation and administrative changes. I often told all commanders and leaders in Aceh, to Pangdam di Aceh, to Governor of Aceh, to Kapolda in Aceh, the military, the police, and the governor, stand together. Do not let suspicion divide you. Show your leadership, responsibility, and commitment. If you all, governor, military commander, and police chief, do that, half of our problems will already be solved. I remember, because I know, after signing the agreement, sometime we were facing big challenge to save the agreement. The same message went to my ministers in Jakarta. We needed one voice, one understanding, one determination to protect this peace, to safeguard this peace. Over time, despite inevitable difficulties, the agreement endured. Laws were passed to give it a firm legal foundation. Former combatants laid down their arms and embraced civilian life. And the people of Aceh began to rediscover something they had been denied for far too long: the simple, precious rhythm of living in peace. Children walked to school without fear. Farmers returned to their field. Families gathered at night, knowing that tomorrow would come without the sound of gunfire. That is the journey, the road to peace in Aceh, as I live it. It is not the story of one man or one administration, but of many hands, many hearts, and many minds, working often quietly and without recognition to turn long and bitter conflict into a lasting peace. It is a story of hope reclaimed, of trust rebuilt, and of a people who choose the promise of better tomorrow over the pain of the past. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, from the long journey to peace in Aceh, there are lessons that I believe are not only relevant to Indonesia, but also for other societies seeking to end protracted conflict. Some of these lessons are universal, applicable in many contexts, while others are deeply rooted in Indonesia's own political and cultural realities. The first lesson is that peace must be owned by the parties in conflict. Outsiders can facilitate, mediate, or provide good offices, but the will to end a war has to come from within. In Aceh case, both the Government of Indonesia and the Free Aceh Movement reached a point where continuing the war brought only losses. And the possibility of peace began to look like the only sensible path, only possible solution to have. This conversion of will was the single most important factor. The second lesson is that leadership matters. Without leadership willing to take risks, peace will remain out of reach. I had to make a decision that carried political costs and security risks. There are many pros and cons here in Jakarta and all over Indonesia. But the show must go on because I do believe this is the only way to end the conflict. The GAM leaders had to do the same. I'm thankful to them. There were moments when holding back for political safety would have been easy, but it would also have been fatal for the process. This is why the president's direct involvement was not a ceremonial. It was the center of gravity for the entire effort. I was the most responsible man in Indonesia during the peace process. Succeed or fail. The third lesson is the importance of clear parameters. From the start, I set non-negotiable principle for our side. Aceh would remain within the United States of Indonesia. Any autonomy arrangement had to be consistent with the Constitution, and the peace process must not weaken national sovereignty. Within those parameters, there was a space for creativity and flexibility. These boundaries help maintain national unity while allowing genuine concession that address Aceh aspiration. The fourth lesson is that building trust is as important as signing agreement. In the years before Helsinki, mistrust was so deep that even small gestures were seen through the lens of suspicion. This is why every meeting, every round of talks, and every public statement had to be carefully managed to avoid setbacks. Trust building also had to happen within the government-owned institution, between civilian leadership and the armed forces, between the executive and the parliament, and between the central government and Aceh province authorities. Fate, timing can change everything. Without the window opened by the 2004 tsunami, it is hard to imagine how quickly both sides would have moved toward an agreement. Tragedy created urgency. Urgency created flexibility. Flexibility created innovative action. While no one would ever wish for such a disaster, its impact on physical psychology cannot be denied. I still remember first, second, third week after Aceh was attacked by big disaster, tsunami. I could see the eyes, probably with the hearts, on both Indonesian military and GAM fighters. So, for me, this is a great opportunity that I have to follow with stronger initiative for continuing a talk and negotiation. Finally, implementation is the real test. Signing the Helsinki MOU was the beginning, not the end. Laws had to be passed, new institutions had to be created, former combatants had to be reintegrated, and communities had to be rebuilt. This is where the role of local leadership became critical. I consistently reminded Aceh leaders that peace would only last if they govern well, avoided corruption, and put the people's welfare first. Learning from the shortcoming of the Geneva Agreement, I was determined to ensure that Helsinki Agreement would not meet the same fate. As president, with the authority and responsibility entrusted to me, I worked relentlessly to safeguard its full implementation, so that the promise of peace be lived and felt by every stakeholder. These lessons are not unique to Aceh. They apply to any society facing armed conflict, whether in Southeast Asia, Africa, the Middle East, or elsewhere. They remind us that peace is not an event. It is a process requiring leadership, patience, and the willingness to keep working even after the headlines fade. Need a compromise, take and give, willing to move one step back for each side. When we signed the Helsinki Agreement in 2005, there was great hope that peace would open the door to rapid progress, that Aceh would recover quickly, grow economically, and offer a better life for its people. Looking back after 20 years, I must speak with honesty. While the absence of armed conflict is a major achievement, many of the dreams we had for Aceh development have yet to be fully realized. The economic growth has yet to reach its full potential. There is room to grow, and there is still work to be done to ensure social and infrastructure improvement fully meet the people's aspiration. The gap between what was envisioned and what has been achieved reminds us of the journey ahead. Yes, the people enjoy security and freedom from fear. Yes, political stability has been maintained. And while progress in the economy, social development, and public services has been varied, this achievement from a strong foundation on which we can build even greater progress in 10 years to come. Why is this so? The answer cannot be found in a single cause. The Helsinki Agreement itself was never meant to be a magic formula. It is not a magic formula that would automatically bring prosperity soon in Aceh. It was, first and foremost, a political statement to end armed conflict, to create a framework for governance, and to allow Aceh the peace and stability it needed to move forward. Development, however, requires more. Sound policies, effective governance, investment in human capital, and the active participation of communities. I have to be candid here. Some of the aspirations we set in 2005 have yet to be fully realized. We understand that the economic journey after the peace agreement faced natural complexities and evolving priorities. While progress has been gradual in diversifying the economy and strengthening public services, these experiences have given us valuable lessons. This is my belief. It's time for a thorough and honest evaluation. Now, Jakarta and Banda Aceh must sit together with openness and mutual respect to examine the past 2 decades. What has worked? What has fallen short? What mistakes have we made? And most importantly, what must be done differently in the years ahead? Such an evaluation must avoid a trap of mutual blame. The spirit of Helsinki was cooperation, not confrontation. We must rekindle that spirit, the willingness to listen, to compromise, and to focus on solution rather than grievances. Another important point is that younger generation in Aceh, who were children or not yet born in 2005, must feel that peace has delivered real opportunities for them. If they see stagnation, lack of job, or inequality, the narrative that peace brings prosperity will lose its power. That is why education, vocational training, entrepreneurship, and innovation are essential priorities moving forward. The people of Aceh deserve the dividend of peace. They deserve education, healthcare, job, infrastructure, and the chance to build a future free from fear and poverty. The responsibility to deliver this is shared. It lies with the local government, with the national government, with civil societies, and with the private sector. If the foundation of good governance and equitable development are neglected, the frustration that one full conflict can resurface in new ways. Conversely, if peace is reinforced by justice, opportunity, and inclusiveness, it can become unshakable. As we look ahead, let us remember, the signing of the Helsinki Agreement was not the end of the story. It was the start of a new chapter. The question now is how we will write the next chapters, whether they will tell a story of sustained progress or one of missed opportunities. The choice and the responsibility is ours. We have just looked back on the last 20 years, 2 decades marked by the hard work of turning war into peace. That journey has laid a solid foundation, yet it is not the final destination. The next 20 years will demand no less of us to ensure that the peace we have secured truly blossom into lasting prosperity. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, 2 decades ago, the guns in Aceh fell silent. That silence was not empty. It was filled with the laughter of children playing in schoolyard, once surrounded by fear, with a call to prayer echoing over villages no longer divided by checkpoints, with the sound of fishermen returning to the sea without worry of being caught in the crossfire. I remember visiting Aceh in those first months of the peace agreement. I saw mothers in the market smiling again, selling their goods without glancing over their shoulder. I saw former combatants shaking hands with soldiers, sharing meal under the same roof. I saw young couples daring to plan to their wedding, confident that their children would grow up in a world where conflict was only a story from the past. These are the moments that remind us why peace matters. They are the real dividend of dialogue and the true rewards of perseverance. And they are what give meaning to all of the effort, the negotiators, the compromises, the sleepless night that brought us to Helsinki and beyond. But I also knew, even in those joyful movements, that peace is never guaranteed. Many peace agreements in other parts of the world have failed within few years, collapsed within few years, because leaders forgot that the real work begins after the signing of the agreement. In Aceh, the first 5 years after Helsinki were crucial, and we managed to keep the momentum, alhamdulillah. But sustaining it for 20 years to come requires continuous leadership, unity of purpose, and the courage to correct course when needed. I stand here today humbled by the fact that I had the privilege to be part of that journey. But I'm equally aware that success of Aceh Peace was never the work of one man or two or one office. It was the work of many leaders in Jakarta and Aceh, commanders and soldiers, former combatants, community leaders, civil society, religious figures, and international friends who believed that peace was worth the effort. To all of them, I extend my deepest gratitude. To the next generation of leaders in Aceh and Indonesia, I say this: the Helsinki Agreement is not just a document to be archived. It is a living mandate to keep building a just, prosperous, and inclusive society. Do not Do not let the sacrifice of the past be in vain. Protect the unity, respect diversity, and always choose dialogue over violence. And to ERIA, I thank you for ensuring that this story continues to be told not as a relic of the past, but as a living source of lesson for the present and the future. As we commemorate this 20th anniversary, let us take pride in what has been achieved, but also take responsibility for what remains unfinished. The work of peace is never truly done. It is a legacy we must guard, a trust we must honor, and a gift we must pass on to the next generation. Let me close my speech with words I often hold in my heart. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of justice, hope, and shared tomorrow. May the road that began in Aceh continue to inspire all of us in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia, and across the world to choose dialogue over violence, unity over division, and hope over despair. I thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency.
Thank you.
Thank you, His Excellency, for your truly inspiring keynote speech. We are very honored to have you here with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to have a photo session. Please allow me to call to the stage to join His Excellency Dr. Please come to the stage, His Excellency Minister Dr. Agus Harimurti Yudhoyono, His Excellency Hasan Wirayuda, Profesor Aizawa, Ambassador Masaki, General Endriartono, General Mipat, and Area President Tatsuya Watanabe. May I invite gentlemen to come up stage for the photo session? Please smile to the camera. Smile to the camera. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Gentlemen, thank you. Enough, okay? You may be seated. Thank you. Thank you, His Excellency, for sharing your experience and expertise with us today. We are going to hear closing remarks. We still have a closing remark, so ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, for the closing remarks, allow me to call Professor Nobuhiro Aizawa.
President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, we thank you from the bottom of our heart for giving us the stories and the inspiration that give us carry the torch and to join the journey, as you mentioned, which is the collective and the long one. With your words, we have been reminded the path is not easy, but it does empower and create difficulties into hope and promises. This is the final session, the final ending of the 3-day commemoration. Thanks to your participation, we have collected a valuable words and wisdom throughout all the participants. Let me share you one, as today, Pa Hasan Wirayuda mentioned, about the acute awareness within the long journey. We need to keep the acute awareness when there is the narrow window that can change course or to correct path. The sense of acute awareness requires the sense to be attentive to the stories and even the scenes that you have provided, President. We also now know that we have to be reminded the force and also the military is the last resort, as General Endriartono Sutarto has kindly emphasized. We cannot forget that. If we do, it is our injustice to today's event and the people that have fought so hard to reach to that position. President of ERIA Watanabe said that without peace, there is no innovation. Without peace, there is no prosperity. So we have to be acute and aware and be joining this collective effort together to bring this 20 years to the next. Let me share you 3 words that I need to highlight. 20 years ago, there was a day that God tested our faith and courage. At those moments, there were tears in the dark day. In those moments, we pledged to stop war and united for peace. These are the 3 titles of the paintings that President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono shared today in the lobby of this building. So please, upon your departure, I hope you can cherish a moment to view the powerful paintings that President Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono has shared today. So not only through words, but with scenes that transcends those messages. Finally, I have been keeping this one word that echoes to me, which was emphasized by the Wali Nangro Aceh in this event. Assalamu alaikum. May peace upon you. These words every time I listen to this word, I'll remember this day and I will think about the long journey ahead to have peace upon us together. Thank you so much for attending, and thank you so much for joining this journey together. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Aceh Peace Agreement, we are reminded that it is not only a historic milestone for Aceh and Indonesia, but also a continuing source of inspiration for peace builders around the world. I hope you had enjoyed 3 days with us, wishing you a pleasant evening. Thank you. Thank you, His Excellency Professor Dr. Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, for being with us today. Thank you, Minister Dr. Agus Harimurti Yudhoyono, for being with us today. Please give this gentleman a round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a fruitful and packed 3 days with us. I hope you had enjoyed your days with us today. Wishing you a pleasant evening and see you in another occasion. Thank you.